Welcome to Secret Story. I went off like never had before. I worked for them, though. There was no way that would ever happen. If I tried telling Jerry what to do, I'd probably get fired. I wondered what it would be like if Mrs. Anderson stood over me and pulled my hair, like in a lot of the videos. I didn't think I'd like it. If Jerry ordered me around like that, it might be okay, but I'd much rather do it to him. I looked at the clock and realized I forgot to do the laundry. It was already 9 p.m., but if I didn't do it, Mrs. Anderson might be mad. I sighed and got dressed, then took care of it before I went back to bed. Gerald, 2 weeks after Chloe started, I stopped at the antique shop on Tuesday afternoon. Instead of going overboard with a dozen roses, I brought Emily a single pink carnation. We flirted a little and discussed the Aubrey Maturin book series, which the movie Master and Commander was based on. I loved it and had read the whole 20-book series twice, but she was only on book 11. I asked her, "How do you make a pirate furious?" "How?" "Take away the P. Pirate." "Irate." "Ha ha ha ha." We chuckled and she asked, "Why don't sailors like traveling on twisty roads?" "Why?" "Scurvy." I laughed at her equally terrible joke and looked in her eyes. She twirled some of her hair with a finger and bit her lip slightly, making it obvious she liked me. I said, "Emily, I like you quite a lot. And I'd enjoy spending even more time with you. However, you deserve honesty. I need to let you know, I'm married." "I'm not, and I don't want to be anytime soon." She asked, "Would you like to have lunch with me Saturday?" "Sure. How about a picnic on the beach? Pick you up at noon." "That sounds nice. I love the beach." She rested her hand on mine and kissed my cheek before I left. I felt a bit guilty but terribly aroused. Days later at our picnic, we kissed a few times, then once more when I dropped her off at home. I was right, she loved riding in the Ferrari. Rochelle, I called in sick to work, since I was so upset. I'd hired Chloe over 2 weeks ago. It was wonderful. In the last 2 weeks, he'd only let me kiss him a few times. Each night he took his tablet into the bathroom and stayed in there a long time instead of doing anything with me. I was sad, but also terribly horny. He hadn't fallen for Chloe either. I wouldn't mind so much if he started sleeping with her. She was beautiful, but I knew he would never run off with a girl so simple. She took care of my son and the house, but I knew she wasn't capable of anything more complicated. I was annoyed that with the face and body of a beauty contest winner, she couldn't even seduce a 40-year-old man. I was glad she'd left to visit her mother this morning. That I heard a loud and annoying noise that still made me smile. Our gardener Antonio was starting to mow the lawn. I threw on a swimsuit and walked to the backyard with a towel over my shoulder, as if I was going for a swim. I smiled and motioned for him to shut off the mower. I noticed him staring at my legs a moment as I walked toward him. I liked his thick mustache and brawny shoulders. "Good morning, Antonio. I was thinking of making some changes. Could you get rid of that row of shrubs and plant rose bushes there instead? And there are some low branches that get in the way. Could you trim the trees?" "Of course, Sonora. Whatever you want." He smiled at me. I rested a hand on his shoulder. "Call me Rochelle. Just charge the roses to our account." "Thanks." "See, Rochelle. De nada." I went up to my bedroom as he started mowing again. I closed the curtains most of the way and watched him work. I got a quick breakfast while he left to get the roses and returned. He started digging and I saw sweat glisten on his neck and muscular arms. I was quite happy when he pulled off his shirt and dug topless. I had a strong urge and started rubbing myself as I watched him. Gerald, in the morning, my phone rang as I was pulling into the museum parking lot. I stopped in my usual spot and answered. "Hello." "Hi. Sorry, I was calling Rochelle Anderson. This is her husband Gerald. I must have grabbed her phone by mistake." Oh. I just wanted to know where she put the French 2 tests from Friday. I was going to hand them back. Since the grades are in the system, it can wait. Sorry to bother you. No problem. Have a nice day. I was annoyed I had the wrong phone but didn't want to drive all the way home and back. I figured since Rochelle usually turned her phone off while she was teaching and I rarely got calls from anybody but family, I'd just switch phones with her later. That I went to the bathroom at lunchtime and sat in a stall. I was bored and started looking through my wife's phone. I was astounded. I muted it quickly and watched a few moments. It was very arousing, but still a little upsetting. I could tell she was very harassed and didn't want to do it. I felt a little guilty, but emailed a copy to myself, then deleted the email from Rochelle's phone. I'd watch it in full later. Rochelle, when I noticed Gerald's phone was on the nightstand instead of mine, I thought of calling to tell him about the mix-up. I decided to do some snooping first. I saw he'd emailed himself the video I'd made of Chloe in the hotel room, a promising sign. Then why happiness quickly faded when I looked at his calendar. He'd been leaving the museum at 3 instead of 5 on Tuesdays and some Thursdays. On those days there were 2-hour appointments with Emily. Last Saturday there was one for museum admin meeting, Beach, Emily. He had told me he was going to a meeting at the museum. He lied to me. I was deeply shocked and felt like vomiting when I saw an appointment a little over a week in the future. On a Saturday and Sunday. Maritime Archaeology Conference Emily. He'd booked a single hotel room but 2 round-trip flights to San Francisco. I knew I had to help Chloe's seduction efforts and came up with a radical idea. That night as we were sitting in bed, I mentioned to Gerald, I heard the Thompsons down the block are getting divorced. He didn't look up from his book but replied, that's a shame. They were together about as long as us. I think they have 3 kids. 4 kids. I can kind of understand, though. Just look at her. Isn't she a real cutie? I showed him a picture of the beautiful cheerleader on my phone that he stared a little while and I could tell he was thinking hard. He said, still, that's not a good reason to cheat when you've been together so long. And the Millers got divorced when he got caught with his office assistant. She's hot, but still. He cleared his throat and said, they were together over 20 years. He shouldn't have done that. I took a few deep breaths and readied a certain video. I said, I know men have certain needs. If you were careful to keep it a secret and nobody ever found out. I coughed and was too upset to finish my sentence. I nervously suggested, if I never caught you, we wouldn't have to do anything about it. I might try not to know, so we could stay together if. I fought to stop them, but tears streamed down my face. It took him far too long to answer, she's hot, but I'd never cheat on you. You're worried over nothing. Let's go to sleep. I tried to console myself, repeating the thought that if he cheated with Chloe at least he would stay. As I gave my speech at the Maritime Archaeology Conference, I stared at pretty Emily in the 4th row. I also liked that she had her shoulder-length blonde hair in pigtails, making her look even younger and cuter. And the French gunnery was so poor that instead of firing a warning shot, they actually hit the bow of the Spanish ship. The unlucky cannonball struck a cask of gunpowder which set off several more. It obliterated the forward section of the ship and caused it to sink in the time taken by 10 breaths. According to the only written account. Emily beamed with affection and pride for me, until I reached a pivotal moment of my story. Explorers and salvors searched over 300 years but couldn't find the wreck. The only clue to the location was a damaged note written by a French priest who witnessed the explosion and died of disease shortly after. My brilliant wife determined the note had been translated incorrectly. Instead of the south side of the island, the battle had been on the sunny side. Since it happened in the morning, that meant east. After our salvage team recovered more than 8 tons of silver and a few thousand gold coins, I asked if I could keep the medicine bottles and medical tools that had belonged to the ship's doctor. I intended to set them up as a museum exhibit. The other team leaders were happy to agree. I returned home and stashed the finds in a few crates in my basement. We were quite happy with the historical value of our discovery, and even happier the gold and silver earned each of us a few years' pay. About a year later my wife reminded me to move my old junk out of the basement. I started sorting and evaluating the items. I noticed that the largest medicine bottle didn't have any liquid in it. I was astounded to find it was full of emeralds. Nearly $40 million worth of emeralds. Apparently, their Sawbones was a jewel thief, too. I paused as the crowd reacted, then continued. I'm a fair and reasonable man, so of course I gave half the gems to the rest of the salvage team. I donated 5% each to the university where I taught and the museum where I currently volunteer. I jokingly added, I'm alive and intact, so I obviously gave the rest to my wife. I paused for a lot of laughter and concluded my talk. Attention to detail can make all the difference. Check and recheck even the smallest things. It might lead you to a great discovery or save one from being lost. Thank you for your time. As Emily and I walked from the auditorium, she had a pained look on her face. She quietly said, You talked about your wife a lot. You weren't involved with the salvage. And I couldn't really mention my secret girlfriend if I want her to stay a secret. She sighed and nodded. I held her hand as we waited for a taxi. On the way, she said, Let's go see the sights and chat about US the rest of the day. We should get some condoms on the way to the hotel, too. She smiled and kissed my lips. Rochelle, my son Jonathan was staying at a friend's house over the weekend and would return home after school Monday. As we ate supper on Saturday evening, I informed Chloe of the situation. Since you failed to win Gerald over, he's in San Francisco cheating with some other woman. I'm so scared that I'm going to lose him. She looked alarmed and told me, I tried hard. I really did. I'm so sorry. I felt tears on my cheeks and remembered a quote from an old friend. When the goin' gets tough, the non-tough go drinkin'. She'd usually say it while handing me a glass of something strong that I smiled and told Chloe, I'm not going to be sad and cry all weekend. I won't do it. I took the most expensive bottle from the wine rack and searched half the kitchen for the corkscrew. I held it up triumphantly and said, Turn on some music. Let's dance the sad away. Later we were halfway through a second bottle of wine. Chloe was sitting next to me, singing very loudly with somebody who was even more out of tune. I guess that must have been me, she said, I want a cigarette, but I'm too polluted to walk. I pulled the fake flowers out of a vase and drunkenly said. Sakai. I done care anymore. Ash in the vase. Gimme one too. I coughed through 2 big puffs, then got a strong nicotine rush as I began to like smoking again. Chloe slurred her words too, as she said, I don't know why HIC. Don't know why he needs somebody else. You're so pretty. Such nice hair. I have no idea how he resisted you. You're gorgeous. I squeezed one of them to prove my point. Anybody would be lucky to have you. Anybody. She held one of mine and said, You can. I like you too. Gerald. I was actually planning to cheat on my wife. Despite Rochelle's blatant offer not to catch me, I couldn't sneak around and lie to her over and over. I felt terribly guilty about the few I had already told her. Did I really want to divorce her and wreck my family, just for sex? I thought intensely and quickly as the taxi approached the restaurant. As we got out, I told Emily, I'm so sorry, but I can't do this. Here's the hotel room key and some cash. I'll text you the reservation for your return flight. What? But we have a lot of chemistry and get along great. I think maybe I love you. Sorry, Emily, but I just can't. I love my family too much. Rochelle, Chloe didn't help by saying, but Jerry, it's not what it looks like. I was confused and upset, and still loved my husband. I drunkenly lashed out at the one who had caused the disaster, at least in my mind. Chloe, you worthless moron. You cost me my marriage. You couldn't win his heart so he would stay here. Then you seduced me. You're fired. Chloe stared in my eyes and yelled. No. Get back here, Jerry. I am not fired. You two are so stupid. You still love each other, right? We nodded. Then this is how it will be. During the day I do my job, and you two are the bosses. At night, I'm the boss. She grabbed Gerald's hair tightly, then mine. And at night my new pets will do anything their mistress says. Right? I saw a bulge in the front of Gerald's pants and was getting turned on again myself. Gerald stared into my eyes and began to nod slowly. I turned toward her and nodded too. At the same time, my husband and I said, "Yes, mistress." She stared into my eyes. Good. Instead of Rochelle, your new pet name is Roach. Since we wear the same size, go get me your highest pair of heels. Roach. I know my other pet, Germ, likes high heels, right? Yes, mistress. Very much. What are you waiting for, Germ? I drunkenly stumbled upstairs to get the shoes as she lit another cigarette that I held the shoes out and objected, but I don't like the taste. She whispered in my ear, if you want to keep him, this is your chance. Yes, mistress. She plopped down on the couch exhausted. Chloe found her cigarette holder and put one of her very long menthol 120s in it. She touched the unlit tip to my nose. Stop. You're not people tonight. I rolled over and kneeled in the middle of the living room carpet. Please, Gerald. Please. She held his hair again, preventing him from approaching me. She asked, please what, Roach? After a shower, the three of us put on bath robes. Chloe and I smoked as we sat at the picnic table in the backyard and discussed some things. I said, I think we should have some rules, so everybody knows what to expect. Chloe asked, like what rules? No more smoking in the house, Gerald said. Doing it in the living room was pretty hot, right? How about only the bedroom if Jonathan is home? Chloe nodded and I agreed, okay. I nervously inquired, and what about other people? If we agree on some things, do you want to be with your other girl sometimes? If I can be sure you're not going to divorce me or leave. I don't know if Emily will forgive me. But maybe. Do you want to be with somebody else too? Somebody other than Chloe? Before I could answer, Chloe said, yeah. We think the gardener Antonio is hot. She nervously giggled, he. And how about we can smoke in the guest house? Gerald agreed, all right, just be careful smoking in bed. Chloe reached in his robe. Is there anything still in there, Jerry? He smiled. I think I could go one more time. He jumped up. Guest house bedroom, it is. Chloe angrily told him, you don't have enough left for your mistress again. You get double the punishment tomorrow. Finally one Friday, the day after Laura's 17th birthday and a month after Jonathan's, I brought her to our house. I called my son to the living room and watched Chloe give them some instructions. John, please sit on the ottoman. Good, Laura, since you're both too shy to ask each other on a date, we're going to help you out. You're here as a sitter. Chloe asked, do you like her, John? He cleared his throat and swallowed. Yeah. A lot. Do you like him too, Laura? Yes. We'll be back Sunday. Don't mess up the house or make any babies while we're gone. Chloe mentioned, you know what John would be doing at night if my sister lived here. There's no way he would care if I sleep with you too. Can she move in? My wife coughed in surprise. I said, that's a clever idea, Chloe, but we'll talk about that later. Okay. We picked up Emily and Antonio on the way to the restaurant. After a tense but nice meal, we went to a hotel room upstairs. Emily nervously looked at my wife Rochelle as she stared back with jealous anger on her face. Antonio and Chloe smiled and held hands that I started the conversation with. Antonio, you've always done a good job with our garden and yard, so I'm giving you a raise. We'd like you to come over 3 times a week, instead of weekly. If Chloe or my wife want some special attention from you, feel free. Thank you, senor. Rochelle nervously told Emily, if you want to kiss or screw my husband sometimes, I guess that's okay. But you do it away from our family and bring him home when you're done. Understand? You give him back to me. Emily anxiously assured her, of course. We want to have some fun, but I know he's mostly yours. I asked, so we all agree. Chloe and Rochelle can sleep with Antonio when they want, and I can spend a few nights and most weekends with Emily. Agreed. Yes. Okay. See. Emily was 23 and legal to drink, so after our tense conversation we went to the hotel bar. I ordered a good cognac and Emily tried her first Mai Tai. We sat close together and watched a few people sing some terrible karaoke. On our third drink, we felt confident enough to get on the karaoke list. First, we sang the classic Meatloaf number she chose, Paradise by the Dashboard Light. It was a lot of fun and most of the patrons applauded as we finished. The other one we sang was slower paced and even more emotional, the relatively recent opera hit Con Te Partiro. Emily looked at me as she sang, Cuando se lontana sogno all'orizzonte y mancan le parole. When you are away, I dream of the horizon, and words fail. When I saw the look in her eyes and heard the deep sincerity in her voice, I knew I was in love and thought she might be. Most of the other patrons didn't understand the words, but politely clapped as the song ended. I stared deeply into her eyes, then French kissed her, getting much more applause. Afterward, we discussed her future. She had finished her bachelor's in history and was working on a master's in languages. She wanted to translate the logs and records of the early Spanish and Portuguese explorers. I told her there probably wouldn't be much money in it, but I thought it would be a fascinating and noble pursuit. After Sunday brunch, Chloe, Rochelle, and I returned home. We were disgusted and even more surprised at the messes all over the house. Chloe tugged my hand and quietly told me, wait a minute. She walked back into the house and returned with a large armload. She handed Laura a spray bottle and roll of paper towels. Once they cleaned things up and got dressed, Laura's explanation disgusted my wife but made me quite proud of my son. Friday night we did it until we ran out of condoms. So we went to get more. We picked up chocolate syrup, strawberry jam, and whipped cream, too. That explained the messes on the kitchen counter, floor of my home office, and his bed. Melissa held my son's hand and informed us, we don't mind taking turns. She kissed his cheek, but Jonathan looked ready to die from shame that I wisecracked in French. Rochelle laughed, then translated for Chloe and the others, oh, to be young and in love.